Finally, an undrafted rookie that pans out for us. What's going on, everyone? Welcome into my first installment of my 2022 player review series. I wanted to start things off with something fun, and Trendon Watford was a lot of fun this season. It was one of my critiques of Neil Olshey that he didn't work around the fringes of the roster well. He never found undrafted free agents that panned out, and his last undrafted free agent signing panned out, and that was Trendon Watford. In this series, I'm going to look at some of my expectations of players before the season. I did player preview videos in September of last year, and I'm going to take clips from those videos. And then I'm going to look at their stats along with if they achieve their statistical goals that I set for them in that video. I'm going to look at positives and negatives. I'm going to talk about what they should work on this offseason. I'm going to talk about what the future holds for them. Anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at some things I said about Trendon Watford. Now, I didn't do a player preview series for him, but I did talk about him in a video where I looked at 7 second-round / undrafted targets for the Portland Trailblazers before last year's draft. Here's what I said. And last but not least, I have Trendon Watford, who is a projected undrafted prospect right now, but is a guy that definitely intrigues me as a forward who can handle the ball and make plays for others. He stands at 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan. He has an 8'9" standing reach, so he's slightly undersized for the power forward position, but I think he can definitely play that position. I think that is his true position. But he's a guy who averaged almost 3 assists per game last year, 16 points per game for LSU. He had some really big offensive moments where he was taking this guy off the dribble, getting into the paint at will, and then when multiple defenders were sent his way, he would find the right pass, the right kick out option, and he was a guy that kind of ran that LSU offense there last year in college. So I'm intrigued by playmaking bigs that show flashes of passing ability, especially if they're able to score a little bit themselves as well. Now, his 2 biggest knocks is he only shot 31% from 3 last year. He has to kind of overhaul his form a little bit. I don't think his release is bad, but he leans back too much on his shot, and his shot is too slow. If he can end up being a good 3-point shooter and a guy that's able to knock down threes, then you're really going to have to pick your poison with him. Either get out all the way and take away that 3, and then he's a threat to drive by you and get to the rim himself and finish himself, or make the right kick out pass out of that scenario. Or you can, knock it out on his 3-point shot and he'll knock down threes, hopefully for his case. So that is kind of the idealistic vision of him as an offensive player. Defensively, he has some question marks. He has to improve there. He will probably never be a good NBA defender, but if he can add a 3-point shot and then hopefully become an average NBA defender, I think he will be a good and versatile role player in the league. That's pretty good for a guy who's projected to go undrafted. I would definitely look at Trendon Watford for a 2-way contract for the Portland Trailblazers. And obviously, I was wrong about his defense. We will talk about that in a second. But first, let's take a look at his stats from this previous season. Now, I didn't do a player preview for him, so I don't have goals, but I will look at his overall stats, which are this. He played around 18 minutes per game, averaged almost 8 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, and a little under 2 assists per game. He was very efficient inside the arc, shot 58% inside the arc, but the 3-point shot didn't really work itself out. He only shot 24% from 3 on the season, but he was an efficient player, shot 59% in terms of true shooting percentage. But here are his stats as a starter. Played almost 32 minutes per game. Now, this was for a tanking Portland team, but 15 points per game, over 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, even more efficient from 2, shot 61% from 2, and then 26% from 3. For an undrafted rookie, that's a pretty phenomenal stat line. Now, he did get an opportunity because of how bad Portland was, but he took full advantage of that opportunity. Now, let's look at some of the positives with his play. The first positive was his defense. In that pre-draft video, I said that I probably can't ever see him being a good defender. Well, I was wrong, and now I could definitely see him being a good defender, and you could even make the argument that he was a good defensive player in his rookie year. Now, he did did lose a little bit of weight before the season. He admitted that, and I think he was a little bit quicker on the perimeter with his foot speed than he was in college, but the main reason why his defense was so good was he just seemed to know what spot to be in at the right time. He looked like a veteran on the defensive end. At times he was pointing where his teammates should rotate. He was making quick rotations. He was making quick rotations himself. He had to play a lot of small ball center, but he was competitive enough on the interior to hold down that position. And he was just very, very solid on that end. He doesn't have the physical tools, which was why he was looked at as an inadequate defender coming into the draft last year, and that's why he wasn't drafted. But he more than made up for it just with IQ and intangibles. The second positive part of his game that I saw this year was his finishing ability. He's pretty good around the rim as a finisher. He has a float game, and that for a big man, for a power forward who had to play a lot of center last year, being able to hit 10-foot floaters at a regular clip is a really good thing to have in the tool bag, and his floater, it looked almost automatic at times this last season, and his finishing ability was definitely a positive. The third positive was his overall playmaking. He was a playmaker, like I said, in college, and that translated to the NBA. As a starter, 3.5 assists per game. There were so many times where he'd get into the paint, draw multiple defenders, and make a quick and accurate kick-out pass to an open shooter. He would hit guys on backdoor cuts. This is the one thing that had me intrigued with him before the draft, and it was really cool to see it actually play out in his rookie year. Chauncey Billups obviously values guys that can playmake, and he's a good coach in terms of developing playmaking for players. So Trendon Watford fit like a glove there. And then the fourth positive is just his overall basketball IQ. For an undrafted rookie who didn't spend 4 years in college, he only spent 2, his basketball IQ is extremely impressive. He didn't turn over the ball much, had almost a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. As I stated on defense, he played very smart on that end all year long and made up for some of his physical deficiencies. The way he reads the floor offensively is already advanced for a player with his experience, and overall he's just an extremely smart player. Now, a couple of improvement areas for him. I think he needs to work on his three-point shot. As I said before we picked him up, the knocks on him were his three-point shot and his defense. He answered the questions about his defense. Now I hope he can answer the questions about his three-point shot, because that'll open up his game even more and make him a guy that might be impossible to keep out of the rotation if he can knock down threes. And then the second negative for him that maybe he can improve on is his overall athleticism. If he can try to become a little bit quicker, a little bit more explosive around the rim, it'll definitely help him out. He's able to make up for that in many different ways, but obviously being a little bit more athletic will help him. And those are the only two negatives I have for him. For other players, I'll have a lot more negatives. It was just hard to think of things that were negative about Trendon Watford this season. Anything else would just be nitpicking at this point. Every other aspect of his game outside of three-point shooting, he did well, in my opinion. He exceeded expectations in. So the three-point shot is what he needs to figure out. In terms of some offseason goals for him, shoot, and shoot some more. He needs to get into the gym. He needs to shoot a lot. I think his form looks a little better than it was in college. He doesn't lean back as much as he used to, but his shot is a little bit slow. I mean, his form doesn't look bad though. His release looks solid, so I don't know what's causing him to miss shots. I don't know if he just needs reps, but that should be what he's doing this offseason, is just shooting 1,000 shots a day, trying to figure out his three-point shot. I think he's a power forward at the NBA level. I don't really like him as a center, even though he played primarily as a center this year. I think size-wise, he's a power forward. He can defend power forwards. He has the foot speed for that. And it's hard to fit him in as a power forward if he can't knock down shots, because then you almost need a center that can knock down threes as well. And off the bench, it's harder to find centers that are able to knock down threes at a high clip. So Trendon needs to figure out his three-point shot. If he was able to knock down threes this year, he would have had a true shooting percentage above 60%. That's the one area of his game efficiency-wise that he really needs to work on. He was a 75% free throw shooter this year, so maybe that provides some hope. As far as the future for Trendon Watford, it's now set in stone. He is locked up on a bargain contract. Watford will be making $1.56 million next year. 2 years from now, he has a non-guaranteed contract, but I assume whatever team has him will pick up that option. It's for $1.83 million, and then the year after that is another team option worth about $2 million. So the Blazers have 3 years of team control. They can keep him on the roster through 2025 at less than $2 million per year. That is an absolute bargain of a contract and a phenomenal pickup for the Portland Trail Blazers. I also expect Trendon to play in Summer League, so that should be a lot of fun, seeing how he played pretty well this season at the NBA level. I think there's a chance that he could dominate in Summer League. This Portland Trail Blazers Summer League team in general is going to be insanely good, especially if we get that New Orleans Pelicans pick. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Watford can do in Summer League. He is a potential backup big next year. I don't know if I would immediately just settle for having him as a backup power forward next year. We have Justice Winslow, we have Joe Ingles as a free agent, but we own his bird rights. We could get a power forward through the draft. We could get a power forward through trade. Jeremy Grant's been the name that's tossed around there, so I don't think it's automatic that he comes in and isn't a rotation player at the start of the season next year. He could fill Joe Ingles' minutes if we bring him back, because he's going to probably be out the first couple of months next year, recovering from that ACL injury he suffered this past season. But he has some potential to get minutes next year, and if something happens, if consolidation trade at the trade deadline happens, if somebody gets injured, I can see him definitely getting minutes. But in the future, I fully expect him to become a rotation player on a good basketball team. Hopefully that's here in Portland. The dude is seemingly a great guy, a fun guy, a guy I like having on this team, and I would love to see him as a part of the rotation going into a season before his contract is up. As far as my grade for Trendon Watford this year, I give it an A. The only thing he could have done better is shoot the 3 ball a little bit better, and then he would have had an A+, but at least an A. I thought about giving him an A+ anyway because of how much he exceeded expectations in every other area of his game. Anyway, that's a wrap for this first player review. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about Trendon Watford down in the comment section below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.